Did you know that Johnny Depp, one of the biggest names in Hollywood, doesn't even think of himself as a star? That might sound strange, maybe even unbelievable, because for decades his face has been everywhere. Movie posters, magazine covers, headlines across the world. He has played characters that defined generations, from the eccentric Captain Jack Sparrow to the gentle Edward Scissorhands, from Willy Wonka with his odd charm to Grindelwald with his dark intensity. Yet when Johnny himself talks about fame, he almost laughs at the idea. He insists that he doesn't feel like a celebrity. He says he's just an artist, someone who tells stories through acting, through music, through painting. Fame, in his words, is more of an accident than a goal he ever chased. That's what makes him so fascinating. Because most actors in Hollywood will tell you about the grind, the ambition, the red carpets, the awards. They want the spotlight. They dream of it. But Johnny? He has always been different. For him, it was never about fame, never about headlines. It was about art. It was about expressing himself in whatever form he could. That's why he's not only an actor, he's also a painter, a poet, a guitarist, and a storyteller. He moves between these forms the way some of us move between conversations. And when he says that he doesn't think of himself as a star, he really means it. Imagine living a life where millions of people know your name, where every move you make becomes a headline, and still feeling like fame was just something that happened by accident. That's Johnny Depp's reality. He didn't chase stardom, he chased passion. When he was younger, he wanted to be a musician. Acting wasn't even part of the plan at first. He ended up in Hollywood almost by chance, nudged into it by friends, and suddenly he found himself in front of cameras. His breakout role on 21 Jump Street in the late 1980s made him a teen heartthrob. Girls screamed his name. Studios wanted to put him in every role that would make money. But Johnny hated being boxed in like that. He didn't want to be the next shiny Hollywood idol. He wanted to be an artist. That's why, instead of cashing in on his fame by sticking with safe roles, he started making strange, bold choices. He played Edward Scissorhands, a character almost no studio believed would resonate with audiences. But he made Edward tender, fragile, human, and unforgettable. He worked with Tim Burton again and again, choosing projects that were weird and risky instead of mainstream and predictable. And through it all, he kept saying the same thing. Acting isn't about being famous. It's about disappearing into a role, about telling a story. Fame just comes along for the ride. The irony, of course, is that by rejecting the traditional path, he became even more famous. Jack Sparrow sealed his place in movie history. A swaggering, eccentric pirate that he built from scratch, turning a Disney ride into a global franchise. Kids dressed up as Jack Sparrow for Halloween. Adults quoted his lines. The role earned him millions, but it also showed his philosophy. He wanted to create characters that lived beyond him, that became part of culture, not just a paycheck. And yet even with all that fame, Johnny still speaks humbly about it. He has said that being recognized on the street sometimes feels uncomfortable. He appreciates his fans deeply, but he never wanted to be on a pedestal. Fame, he believes, creates distance between people. It builds a wall. And he doesn't like that. He prefers to break those walls down, to connect with people as a human being. If you've ever seen him at concerts with his band, Hollywood Vampires, you know what I mean. After performing, he doesn't just disappear into a limousine surrounded by bodyguards. He lingers. He signs autographs. He talks to fans. Sometimes he shares little jokes. Sometimes he hugs them. Sometimes he just listens. He treats people, not like an audience, but like friends he hasn't seen in a while. And that's why his fan base is so fiercely loyal. They don't just admire his talent. They feel like he sees them. And here's something a lot of people don't know. Johnny Depp carries sketchbooks and notebooks with him almost everywhere. Whenever the noise of fame gets too loud, whenever he feels the weight of the world pressing in, he turns to them. He sketches faces, scribbles poems, writes down fragments of thoughts, or just doodles. Sometimes he picks up his guitar and plays quietly for hours. These little private rituals keep him grounded. They remind him that art is the core of who he is, not the headlines, not the controversies, not the paparazzi, just art. He has often said that he doesn't care about being remembered as a star. What he cares about is whether the work he did mattered to someone, whether a painting, a song, or a character touched someone's life. That's what keeps him going. And that's why, even after so many years, he still pushes himself into new roles, new projects, even into directing and painting exhibitions. Another fascinating thing about Johnny is his loyalty. In Hollywood, where friendships are often temporary and alliances shift with box office numbers, Depp has held on to a tight circle of collaborators. He works again and again with the same directors like Tim Burton, and he stays close to musicians he admires. Loyalty, he says, matters more to him than fame or money. If someone believes in him, he gives that belief right back. And after everything he has been through, controversies, lawsuits, personal struggles, it's remarkable how he keeps returning to the same truth. He's not perfect. He's not untouchable. He's not larger than life. He's just a man who loves to create. Fame comes and goes, but art is forever. That humility is rare in Hollywood. So many stars get caught up in their image, in the glamour, in staying relevant. But Depp seems to have found peace in being himself, even if that self doesn't always fit the mold of what Hollywood expects. He dresses how he wants. He speaks in his own rhythm. He disappears for months into quiet European villages. And when he returns as Johnny the artist, not Johnny the superstar. It's why fans stick with him through thick and thin. They see the human side. They see the struggles, the mistakes, the vulnerability, and they see the humility. Even when the world throws judgment his way, he stands in front of it quietly, reminding us that he's just another person, just someone, trying to make sense of life through creativity. Looking ahead, Depp has been hinting at projects that will focus less on blockbuster numbers and more on meaning. He wants to tell stories that matter to him, not just stories that make money. He wants to make films, music, and art that reflect who he is now, not who Hollywood thinks he should be. And maybe that's the real message in all of this. Fame doesn't define him. Art does. When you listen to Johnny Depp, you realize he's not just talking about himself. He's reminding us of something far bigger. Something that stretches beyond Hollywood, beyond red carpets, beyond the flashing cameras. He's reminding us that every human being is more than the labels the world sticks on them. We're more than the jobs we do, the titles we carry, the attention or criticism we get. At the heart of it, what truly matters is what we create, how we connect with the people around us, and what we leave behind once we're gone. And that idea, that way of looking at life, is what makes Johnny Depp such a compelling figure. He isn't just another actor. He's living proof that fame is temporary, but expression, the art, the stories, the connections, those last forever. When he says things like this, you can almost hear the echo of his own experiences. Think about the life he has lived. A kid from Owensboro, Kentucky, raised in a family that moved constantly, often struggling to make ends meet. He didn't grow up dreaming of Oscars or global recognition. In fact, he dropped out of school at 15 to pursue music. He sold pens over the phone to pay his bills, just another teenager with big dreams and very little certainty about the future. There was no guarantee he'd ever make it. For him, it was always about passion. He just wanted to play music, and that tells you something. Even back then, before Hollywood ever noticed him, his focus was on expression, not fame. Fast forward to his early acting days. His first major break was a small role in A Nightmare on Elm Street. It wasn't glamorous, he was just another young actor trying to find his place. But even then, you can tell his interest wasn't in being a celebrity. He wasn't trying to mold himself into the stereotypical Hollywood leading man. When 21 Jump Street came along, he became an instant teen idol. Posters with his face were on bedroom walls all over America. Suddenly, he was the star everyone wanted. But what did he do? He fought against it. He didn't want to be boxed into roles that only valued his looks. He wanted to take risks, to play characters that challenged him even if it confused audiences. That's why when Tim Burton handed him Edward Scissorhands, he threw himself into it. A strange, delicate character, far removed from the heartthrob image people expected. And it worked. Not only did Edward become iconic, but it also set the tone for Depp's career. He wasn't going to chase popularity, he was going to chase expression. He was going to build a body of work that mattered to him, even if the world didn't always understand it. The world did understand. People connected with those choices. They saw the vulnerability in Edward. They laughed at the madness of Jack Sparrow. They felt the strange warmth of Willy Wonka, the eerie darkness of Ichabod Crane, the intensity of Sweeney Todd. Every role carried something human. And through it all, Depp kept saying the same thing. He wasn't doing it for fame. He was doing it for the art, for the craft, for the chance to create. This is what makes him different from so many in his industry, because Hollywood often celebrates the surface. Who's trending, who's pulling in box office billions, who's winning awards. But Johnny talks about something deeper. He reminds us that none of that lasts. The glitz fades, the box office. Numbers vanish, the trophies gather dust. What really stays with people is how the work made them feel, how it connected them to a part of themselves they didn't even know was there. That's why he's always been uncomfortable with the word star. Fame, to him, feels like a prison. It puts people on pedestals and makes them untouchable. He's often described fame as a wall between himself and others, a barrier that makes real connection harder. And what does he do? He spends his life trying to tear that wall down. You see it in how he treats his fans. He doesn't sweep past them as if they're invisible. He takes time. He listens. He shares laughs, little moments that mean the world to the person standing in front of him. That's not something you can fake. That's someone who genuinely wants to connect as a person, not as an image. And maybe that's why, even in his most difficult years, his fan base has remained so loyal. Because they don't just see a Hollywood icon, they see the human being behind it. They see the humility, the gratitude, the vulnerability. They see someone who has been knocked down and stood back up, not because he wanted to protect his reputation, but because he simply wanted to keep creating. That kind of resilience inspires people. It shows them that no matter how public your struggles are, you can still hold on to who you are. He has spoken about how he doesn't see himself as special. He often says, "I'm just like everyone else. I just happen to do my art in front of a camera." Think about the weight of that statement. Here's a man who has worked with the biggest directors, earned hundreds of millions, been recognized around the globe, and he insists he's just like the rest of us. That's humility. That's grounding. And in a culture that worships fame, it's almost radical. But what he's really telling us is something universal. That who we are isn't defined by the spotlight we're under, or the titles people attach to us, or the judgments thrown our way. Who we are is defined by what we create with our time, what kind of connections we build, and what impact we leave when the lights go out. Fame fades, but art, kindness, loyalty, love, those are the things that last. And Depp practices what he, preaches. He doesn't stop at acting. He paints, he writes poetry, he makes music. He carries notebooks filled with sketches and lyrics, not because he has to, but because he can't help it. It's how he lives. It's how he processes the world. It's how he makes sense of the chaos of fame. When everything around him gets too loud, he turns to art. Not the art the world expects, but the art that keeps him alive. What's more, he doesn't surround himself with endless crowds of celebrities. His circle is small. He's loyal to the people he trusts, directors like Tim Burton, friends in music, bandmates. Those are the people who matter to him. Loyalty, to Johnny, is worth more than fame or money. That's why he sticks with the people who stick with him. It's his way of grounding himself in an industry that can be so transactional. And when you step back and look at his career as a whole, you see a pattern. He isn't chasing relevance. He isn't worried about what the tabloids say. He isn't obsessed with maintaining an image. He is, and has always been, obsessed with creating. And that's what makes his story resonate. Because we all feel that pull, don't we? That desire to be more than the labels. To live a life that means something deeper than just what the world calls us. So when Depp talks about expression lasting longer than fame, he's not giving us a Hollywood soundbite. He's giving us a piece of his truth. He's reminding us that when the red carpets roll up, when the awards are forgotten, when the headlines shift to someone else, what remains are the stories, the songs, the art, the connections. And isn't that what all of us hope for in some way? To leave something behind that matters. That's why Johnny Depp's words carry so much weight, because he's lived the extreme version of fame, the adoration, the controversies, the battles, the victories. And he's come out of it saying, none of that defines me. What defines me is the art I create and the people I connect with. And maybe that's the lesson he offers to all of us, that no matter how small or large your life feels, you are more than the labels, more than the job, more than the attention or lack of it. You are what you create, the love you give, and the mark you leave on others. Johnny Depp is a reminder of that. Not as a star, not as a headline, not as a Hollywood myth, but as a man who, despite all the noise, still chooses expression over fame. And that's why people keep watching him, listening to him, defending him, and celebrating him. Because in his story they see a reflection of their own struggle to be more than what the world tells them they are. And that's a story that never gets old. So maybe the real question is this. Do you see Johnny Depp as a star who's trying to stay humble, or as an artist who just stumbled into fame? Maybe he's both. Maybe that's why he remains such a mystery even after all these years. Because no matter how much we think we know about him, there's always another layer, another story, another glimpse into a man who refuses to be defined by the spotlight. And if you've ever wondered why he inspires such loyalty, why his fans defend him so passionately, maybe this is it. They don't just see an actor. They see a man who, despite everything, has held on to the most important thing of all, his humanity. So here's the takeaway. Johnny Depp shows us that being an artist isn't about awards, fame, or fortune. It's about staying true to yourself, about creating something that matters, about connecting with people in ways that go beyond the screen. And that's why, no matter where his career goes next, his story will always be bigger than Hollywood. Because behind the fame, behind the controversy, behind the characters, there's just Johnny, a man with a sketchbook, a guitar, and a love for art that never fades. And maybe that's why we keep watching. Because in a world obsessed with fame, it's refreshing to see someone who looks at it all and says, "That's not who I am, I'm just an artist."